1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, it's going to be back to just a me talky one just for a moment. Wonderful to have you here. I am just in a little bit of a bind of how to get all the content out that's in my head and in my to-do list. So I don't want to drop the momentum on trying to continue to process and externalize some of the things that I'm working at from a kind of overarching level, because it's really useful for me. So forgive me that we've gone from like vlog on the streets of Vietnam to being back in this room. And as you can see, there's like quite a lot going on in this room right now. She's a bit of a mess. I haven't got quite to the transform your life phase about having a squeaky clean house that is perfectly organized and everything with the place. In this house, since moving to a smaller place, I don't have a place for everything, and it's very clear because stuff just keeps rotating from room to room, waiting to kind of have a magical solution. But the solution just has to be to give it away, sell it, throw it out, because there's just literally not enough space in this house. Hello. I really wanted to just start by responding to this comment here. Have you noticed, if you've watched some of these videos, sometimes I'll refer to stuff thinking that I'll edit it in later and then have forgotten to edit it in later? I watched one back where I was like, what am I pointing to? And I was like, oh shit, I forgot to put it in. Anyway, this is this comment which I definitely had remembered to put in from Pass On Your Postcode. Thank you so much for your question/comment. I think I just wanted to be very clear. I just wanted to start. I'm not answering this because I have no answers for you, but I wanted to use this as the prompt because it made me think about a lot of things, and I just need to be very clear in saying, to me, I'm not giving any advice, right? This is no teaching. This is no wisdom. This is nothing other than my own reflections. If I were to try and impart something, being 1 week in my meditation journey, it reminds me of that episode of The Simpsons where they're trying to think of ways that they can make money, save money, and Marge is like, I can teach piano. And they're like, but Mom, you don't play piano. And she's like, I'll take lessons. I just need to stay one lesson ahead of the kids. And I always think about that in situations where people who are vastly unqualified for something start becoming an expert or teaching on it. Darwin's a great example of that happening many times over in many different ways. Oh, a masterclass run by that person who I'm pretty sure did their first thing of that last year? Okay, great. It's what is the best and worst about Darwin, but that's a story for another time. Do you know, as someone who doesn't have a formal diagnosis, but like probably if you've seen enough of my life, you can make a fairly educated guess that there might be a little bit of something going on. But let's just for the purposes of this, just refer to it as like a chaotic brain. And I don't think that's a negative thing. I think a chaotic brain, I'm so much more interested in people with chaos in their heads and in their bodies and in their lives, because it's so much more exciting and interesting than kind of just lukewarm predictability. I know they're not the only two options, but if I had to choose, I'd take chaos every time. And I think that chaos is a key part of my creative process as well, which is why I have such an intimate relationship with it. What I will say, though, that my experience of this 1 week is, has been positive, really great. It feels so nice to move my body, running or exercising, and then to still my mind and still my body or quiet my mind. That feels so nice. Just a side note, when I was listing all the things that are really great about meditation, here's something that's not. Sitting in, I don't know what the kind of yoga term for it is, but like on your ankles, these ankles do not like that. I would really like to build up my ankle strength and flexibility so that I can sit comfortably on there. I make it through the part that I'm supposed to, sitting on my ankles, and then I go back into cross-legged, and Woo! They are electric. There is enough pins and needles for me to start an embroidery class. So that is something that's a little bit of a challenge at the moment. Anyway, I definitely feel like, even in this short space of a week, that of independent practice, I am, there is a little well of calm that I'm able to draw on a little bit more. I'm noticing just a little bit more edge between actional circumstance occurring in life and my response to it. Um, and I'm noticing not better sleep. I won't say that because I cooked my sleep somehow. I went to bed too early on the first nights coming home, and now I've got into this weird thing of like, I'm tired, I'll go to sleep, ping, it's 2 a.m., I'm now wide awake, which is so odd because the time difference between here and Saigon is like 3 hours. Time, sorry, let me just check that. This is not interesting content, Kyle, while you live research something. 8:24, 9:24, 10 to 3 hours. That doesn't feel like enough to have knocked me round. But I think because maybe I was staying up later towards the end, which would have been really late over here. And then, I don't know, whatever's happened, it's happened. I'm hoping tonight I've sort of helped fix that because I'm set up not going to sleep until midnight at least. That then just feels like surely my body can't wake up 2 hours later, surely. And I've got an early start tomorrow. Um, okay. So enough about that. But I just want to say something about more broadly about like, I don't know, this kind of like chaotic mind. My mind this year, since leaving full-time work, has never felt better. And I think it's for a number of reasons. I think about the book that my friend Nadia recommended to me, that is all about the kind of idea, and I can't remember what it is called right now, but I'm just going to put it here. Don't forget, Kyle. I should just make a little note, shouldn't I? Like, what are the things I need to edit in? Comment and book. Yeah, got it. The Myth of Being Normal. I remembered it. So if I don't put it in, it's called The Myth of Normal. The Myth of Normal by Daniel Mate and Gabor Mate, father and son. But basically, the kind of like hypothesis of that book is that rather than medicating ourselves to fit into a world that is built around routine, consistency, and essentially capitalism and post-industrialist commercialism, we need to kind of have a deeper look at like, hang on, are we medicating to fit into a system that we believe in? And are there any other alternatives to that? And for me, I mean, I don't want to sound like a kind of anti-vaxxer cooker because I think there's great irresponsibility in people not being vaccinated. And I feel like the same argument could be made of like, I just feel like it's not right for my body. But I guess my lack of medicating myself comes down to like, A, I haven't sought a diagnosis, but also B, there's not a herd immunity relying on my own health, and there's not people more vulnerable than me that are at risk if I do or don't medicate. So there's less of a social responsibility. But for me, I have this analogy, right, that I discovered one day last year when I was making bread. And it was either a work day or a weekend, can't remember. Let's just say it's a weekend in case that can be brought to trial in some way. The bread that I make, according to the recipe, requires 2 sets of proving. So I'm sure you know, but like, leaving the dough in a warm place so that it rises, and then you knead it down again or put it into the baking tin from the dish or whatever else, and then let it prove again, and it should like double in size essentially. The recipe recommends like, I can't remember, 45 minutes and then maybe 30 minutes the second time. I am rarely ever, I'm not a cook at all, but I'm rarely ever on top of it enough to watch it that fastidiously. Even if I set an alarm, the alarm will go off and I'll be like, ooh, go get the bread and knead it down and put it into the next container. But then something will catch my attention and I'll let it go. And on this day, I was thinking about like, oh, idiot, like, oh my gosh, it's been sitting there for like 2 hours. And I was like, okay, quick, Carl, get onto it. You got to get this bread made. And then I remember it was like, the next step is like, before the second proving, preheat the oven to 200 degrees. I'd done that, but then I'd forgot to change containers or something. So the oven was just like sitting on for like an hour with nothing in it, and the bread wasn't ready to go. And then then I turned that off, and then I did the second proving. But then the second proving like went for so long, and I sort of forgot about that. It was in a warm, sunny spot, so it was doing its thing. But like I just left it, and then I was like, oh shit! And now the oven's not on, and then so I turned the oven back on, and then the point being, I kind of like chaos mind let it take its own path, and the whole time was beating myself up in the same way that I used to do at work, right? People would have meetings and drawl on and kind of be unfocused and sort of throw out random bits of information. And me, even if I was steering those meetings, was just being like, why are you talking about that? That's got nothing to do with you. Your opinion in this situation is completely invalid in the sense of like, I don't care what you think about this project. This project has to be done. And I'm not talking about like an artist who's, doing a mural. I'm talking about salaried local government workers who are paid to do a job, paid to turn up on certain days, who are working, in my team or whatever else, where it's like, we have to do this thing. We're legislated to follow this process and whatever else. I don't really care whether you believe that, like, I don't know. It's such a stressful, crazy time. Yeah, sure, it is. So, like, to me, and I know that sounds a bit callous, and trust me, I'm the first one who wants to talk about feelings and how do we like intrinsically get buy-in. But I feel like some of that work needs to be done personally and in your own journal and in your head. And that's so when you come to work, there is a sense of like, let's get on with it. But that rarely ever happened. Everyone loved to give their 2 cents, even on a project that had nothing to do with them. And my brain, because I couldn't like hold everyone's opinions and be like, okay, but I don't know how to acknowledge that and not be rude. I would never say that in the workplace, right? I'm being really crass and direct and honest now in a way that I wasn't at work. I was very much like my drama facilitator is the same as the manager, Kyle, who's like, great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's good to know. And da, 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 da. Even though on the inside I was just screaming like, shut up and do your work. I don't want to be here either. And if I started telling you all my feelings about this place, we'd be here till 5 o'clock and we still wouldn't have started the purchase order. So I find it really difficult in those meetings to find it like when we're like, to me, there's a really clear process for like how we can move through a meeting even, but things so quickly move off. And anyway, I just found it a bit overwhelming at times to be like, why are we talking about things that are not needing to be talked about? This is really strange and confusing. And I would beat myself up to be like, well, everyone else here is quite normal and they're doing their own thing. They're all following a similar pattern here, which is like, come to work, whinge about work, say I need my morning coffee, and then slowly, quietly like tap out some things, but maybe work like maybe at 60 to 70% kind of efficiency is what I would gauge based on having, supervised people and spoken deeply with them and been in workshops with them. Honestly, like 70% is what most people are at in terms of their productivity. And I would sit there being like, I'm finding it so hard to kind of deal with the symphony in my head and in my body, and just to sit and kind of nut this out. But then, that would reach a volcanic boiling point and I would just smash out so much work in this hyper-focused way, either with the help of lisdexamphetamine or not. And then I realized the same thing is happening with the bread. I'm giving myself such a hard time because my process does not look like the normal people who are not normal anyway. No one's normal. Everyone has their own quirks and individualities. It's unfair of me to lump all the normies into one big normie sack, right? And I would take a stick and just repeatedly hit myself over the head. Not literally, but I just mean in the sense of like, why can't I do this? Like other people can just sit down and quietly plod along at things not very well. And I can do things really well or completely incompetently, but almost nothing in between. And the bread, at the end of the day, made it into the oven. I made there's actual stakes, much like, when I've left things too long at work, there's actual stakes, and it's like, this needs to go to a meeting tomorrow. So if it's not done, you need to be at the meeting explaining why it's not done. And I can suddenly see a room full of faces being like, where is this? And that makes me be like, okay, get to work, Kyle. And similarly with the bread, I don't want to burn down the house. And so I'd set like 3 timers, the oven timer, like there was no escape. And the bread was so fluffy. It was great. Probably the extra proving time really helped it. I don't know, did it? I'm not sure. But in the end, the outcome was the same. And it was only because of my own judgment. And only if I'd shared that process with a normie of like, oh, I left it prove for an extra hour, like I forgot about the bread or whatever. No one needs to know. If I was just serving that bread up to guests that were coming round for dinner, as long as I had adjusted my specific process and my circumstances and a model that works for me, which is like, do you know what? I actually need to allow myself half a day to make bread. A normie doesn't have to. I have to. But do you know what I have the luxury of at the moment? Half a day to make bread. And I make bread every couple of days and I love it. And it tastes good and it's consistent and it's great and it works for me. What is less flexible and not as able to kind of meet the needs of my specific process and my own quirks and my own chaos mind is a traditional workplace. So all of that long-winded story and analogy is just to say, as much as I want to say meditation is such a great thing for people with ADHD, you should definitely try it, which probably you should. You, listener, whoever you are, not the person who asked the question, I mean like just anyone listening to this, I am not qualified to make that assessment or recommendation. B, in my heart, I'm like, probably it's really good for you if you're not too dissimilar to me. But C, I think there's a bigger systemic problem that needs to be addressed, not by you, by like the world, right? And that is things like some spaces do not gel well with the energy that some people bring to them. Unfortunately, it's just a fact. And I think that's why when I look at all of the people who are absolutely bumbling, chaotic, incomprehensibly late, disorganized, untidy, financially cooked in terms of their taxes being late or whatever it might be, all of my friends essentially, how they are still able to be some of the most incredibly talented, gifted, people that are of service to the community in so many ways and have such ragingly interesting artistic voices and just great people is because they operate in pockets where their skills are highlighted. Sometimes that tips into being abused, but I would say like the right job, performers, creative stuff, freelance, people working with their own businesses, entrepreneurs, people who juggle multiple tasks to play to their own sense of kind of like inattentive boredom that arises from just being in one thing and aiming for that like 10-year long service leave or whatever it is. Radio announcers, children's entertainers, actors, visual artists, dancers, people who are in their body, who've been able to channel all of the thunderstorm that is their brain into their body and get actually praised and paid for that. It's so clever. And I think I'm doing that. I've done it before, but I haven't consciously done it before. I've just been like, I love acting. That's what I'm doing. I didn't, in school think I have a lot of trouble sitting still and kind of thinking and kind of like keeping up with just the kind of normie processes here. I better do something that's embodied in its practice, physicalized, and has a real sense of kind of like short-term changeover. But it's only in retrospect and highlight that I'm like, oh, of course I love theatre. And I've had absolute like soared to the heights of my potential when I've acted in theatre seasons. Because it's like 4-week rehearsal, 4-week season, boom, done. Get in, love everyone deeply, give it your all, turn up. Kyle, you can turn up on time. It's only for 8 weeks. Yes, I can. Away we go, on to the next thing. So interesting. It's so interesting. So I don't know how we do that without a revolution. I think it starts with ourselves, right? Like all revolutions. And just thinking about what are the spaces that you operate in, because I think on some level it's like maybe nothing needs to change. Maybe for some people, meditation or mindfulness or anything is not actually great advice. It's like, go hard, sister. Go hard, brother. Go hard, non binary sibling, in just rocketing to the edges of your chaotic, crazy superpower. Because for me, I feel like the kind of Superman, Kryptonite, whatever, Spider-Man, and what's his, like, I guess what's her name? Aunt May and Mary Jane, and the kind of women in his life that he ends up kind of feeling are the vulnerability for him. And the death of his Uncle Ben, I guess. We don't need to go into Spider-Man mythology, Carl. But I think for me, you only get, and I sort of articulated this in different ways, but I just want to kind of say it for my own sake again. It's part of the handshake. You get 10 years of overdue tax, a room that looks like this. You get a sense of like personal grooming and style that's like best described as like, he's really trying to get it together. You get me being kind of like quite late. You get me doing things like turning up to a foreign country without any money. Have done that before. Turned up to Bali once, just didn't have a wallet or any cards with me. Had to like convince someone in the visa line to be like, could you pay for my visa so I can get into the country, and then I'll get a SIM card. Or activate a like eSIM via the internet, and then I'll be able to transfer you some money, and then anyway, wild. I think you only get those things like that. That's part of the agreement, but the other side of that is you get someone who is highly creative, who is able to actually deal with extreme stress extremely well, who can deal with self-sacrifice and also, I think, a fair amount of grit. Strangely, but in the right circumstances. I think you have the ability like to kind of like head to the airport being like, lol, I don't know if we're going to get out of the country because the visa's not confirmed yet, but we'll see what happens, rather than like, I don't know what's going to happen. And I think you also get someone who's able to like pivot quickly, who's able to go with the flow. Another thing just learnt like this weekend when like making plans with someone, you get someone like me who's like, time is just infinitely expansive and anything's possible. So that when I said, yeah, I'll go to that thing that they said 2 days ago, now it's come closer to the thing. I'm like, I don't know. I've got to get stuff done and I haven't done it. And I want to rest and I want to da-da-da. And they think I'm doing a flipsy trixie and being like, I was tricking you all along. Where it's like, no. Genuinely 2 days ago, it felt like we're definitely going. I'm absolutely committed to that thing. And now that we're here, I just feel like a different person, and it's a different thing you're talking about. I know that's crazy, but that is just one of the kind of like kind of things about my head, I think. But I'm starting to realize that in the right settings, the superpowers outweigh all the negative chaos elements. The positive chaos outweighs the negative. I think the kind of like framework that I see the world through, the ability to look around that meeting and be like, this is not working and you're speaking off topic. This is so strange. You haven't spoken at all in 15 minutes, which makes me nervous. You asked a question that we've already answered earlier. Like the kind of like pinging of taking in all the information and dealing with that, but then being like, oh, no one's really coming together on the one point, and I don't have enough authority and we don't have enough trust as a group to be able to use that information. That's actually the same ability. That's actually the same power. That's like I'm at what I use in a rehearsal room, which is why I think I'm a very good director. And it's also the same superpower of like analysis and people reading and space management that I think makes my TikTok lives quite fun, to be honest. And I think it's also the same thing that I used in different jobs, like being an actor in kids' hospitals and walking into a hospital room where you're like, I have no idea who's behind this curtain, what their diagnosis is and what's happening, but our job is just to try and make their life a little bit more like fun or distracting or entertaining or something for like 15 minutes. And I think it's also the same superpower that's like, I can find it within myself to be like, okay, It's 11:30 p.m., but I'm caught by the wind in my sails of like, let's make a video and then put it out into the world. And people seem to appreciate that. And I certainly appreciate it because I have so much fun doing it and sharing it. And I think that's just all part of the same, they're just different sides of the same coin. And I'm really grateful for that. So, again, I just want to be clear. I'm not really like giving an essay as an answer to this question. It was just like such a lovely kind of just thought that you offered up. And I just wanted to respond just to kind of help myself process. There's this thing in the, I should say, every time I'm saying meditation, it's really, maybe it's more accurate to say breath work, but I think because a part of it is meditation, I don't know. I think it's all one and the same, a little bit connected. But the reason that I think what works for me about how to get into meditation, like saying, I'm sure anyone watching this, you could not have made it to whatever age you are watching this and not have heard one person at least say to you, you should get into meditation. It's really good for you. It's one of those things that's like, we know meditation's good for us. Smoking is bad. We know we need to eat more fruits and vegetables. We know we need to exercise more, drink more water, and have less screen time. I don't think there would be anyone that would argue with that, right? And maybe you'll go into like, well, actually fruit has lots of fructose and that can be sugar. Oh, shut up. That's not what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? There's just like these universal truths that like no matter what fad diet comes and goes, there's kind of a baseline of like, we know we shouldn't be binging a packet of Allen's Red Frogs, right, before we go to bed. That doesn't need a nutritionist or a doctor to tell us that. We know that to be true. And I believe that we know that meditation is one of those things. Probably now more than ever, right, with the amount of like screen time in our lives. I'm conscious as someone who's like trying to get back into reading but has only just been able to do it this year. I'm conscious that without the kind of hour window of this meditation breath work, there aren't many times in my day where I'm not talking or I'm not listening to someone else talk. Running's another one, which is nice. But even then, I've got music kind of like blasting in my ears the whole time. So it's weird. It's such a simple thing. And it's so different from sleeping, which is like, brain disconnected for the night. I think the actual preciousness of gathering silence is really interesting to me. Again, I'm a baby meditator, so I know nothing, but I'm just reflecting my experiences. The last thing I just wanted to say though is, sitting in silence, and also the idea of, okay. Oh, I was really hoping I could just bang this out in 15 minutes, and now we've got another, episode of this 30-minute an hour speaking of spending too much time on screens. Oh, yeah, sorry, getting back to the point. We know this to be true, but that is not enough to make us take action as humans. It's certainly not enough to make me take action. I managed to quit smoking. Just kidding, I never started. But I think I remember that for me, I also just need to know what I can and can't do. And the limits for me, all of those things I mentioned before about like knowing yourself to know what your limits are and what you respond to well, and then also knowing like what are the just like toddler tricks. I've talked about like my little coloring in charts up here about like follower counts and different goals and things, and almost like having like a primary school classroom, elementary school classroom on my board doors back there. And I just love it. I sort of feel a bit embarrassed if people came around and looked at it or read it, but like it's so good for me. It really works. It's what works for me. And I think conventional self-help, lots of the books and things I've read are also based on neurotypical normies as the kind of core audience. So that when I've read them before, I've been like, there's this thing every year about people being like, New Year's resolutions, they don't last. They don't last, so don't bother setting them. Statistics show by February, blah, blah, you'll have stopped it. Well, okay, sure, if that works for you, then that's true, if that's helpful. But it's not helpful for me because I'm on day 150 or something of my Duolingo streak that I started as a New Year's resolution and felt like I just love New Year's. I just think it's such a great reset time and it just feels so clarifying. And that just doesn't apply to me because for whatever reason, I'm able to follow through. And then equally, there's other things where people are like, get up early. Don't do your thinking work at the first part of the day and then ease into the other. Nah, it doesn't work for me. And then another thing I think is like, like follow YouTube tutorials, do these exercises in the book as they come, or just, I don't know, I can't do it. But get me in a country where there's I need you to know how random it was me doing this course. I got to Vietnam, I Googled meditation courses, thinking it might be like Bali and I could just rock into the pyramids of Chi and there might be a shamanic vision quest to pop into. That's a story for another time as well. And there wasn't really. There was something else that I was interested in, but it wasn't running at the time. There was some sort of yoga, something, which I was like, yoga's not super my thing. And then there was this one, The Art of Living. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. But even up until that first going to the course on day one, I got lost. I took 3 Grab drivers and it was half an hour late. And I literally at about 20 past, I was like, maybe I just text them and say I'm not coming. Keep the money. We'll go to the market and have some delicious pho and go from there. And I was like, no, go. This feels like it's part of that kind of challenge. And I'm so glad I did. But there's so many things in my life that I'm like, do it, don't do it. I'm going to do it. And then it's been like, holy smokes. I'm so glad that I did it. Tomorrow's going to be an example of that as we hop on a Jetstar birthday flight with Shannon Knoll to fly to Townsville and I attempt to win best dress competition and hopefully get on the news. I'll do a video about that as well. But the randomness of this course is also quite specific because I almost need to trick myself. I'm a bit like a dog being taken to the vet. It's got to be like, do you want to go for a walk? Come in the car. Do you want a treat? Okay, hang on. We're not taking the right road home. Where are we going? I wonder where we're going. Oh, what are we doing at the vet? Oh, I don't know. No, well, we might not be getting a needle. I don't just come inside. No, come inside. Oh, well, you're just in Vietnam. Just go to this guy. Oh, what are you doing? And the whole time, I think if I overthink things, it's the reason that I'm like, I would not have gone to this course in Australia. So it's such a gift to have been like, I'm so glad that it was running on the exact week that I was over there. And I'm so glad that I got to do the 3 days. Otherwise, just would never have started it. So I'm really grateful to Vietnam for that. On my Eat, Pray, Fur journey, book to be released soon. And I often find that in my life, I have to invent a game or parent myself with some kind of like Valium mashed up into my dog food trickery in order to get me to do something. But then through these gateways of absurdity and randomness, often great things have arisen. This is one of them. Good night.